Thank you. Thanks. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here today. Hope you're enjoying the conference so far. I'm going to talk about content marketing today in a second, but I want to start off with a quick story. A couple months ago, out to having adult beverages with the marketing team, and we're sitting there, and somebody says, "Hey, let's make things interesting. Why don't we go around the table and everybody say something that you think will blow everybody else's mind, right? The worst one has to buy the next round." So I said, fine, okay. So somebody starts out and they say, "Did you know that if cars could point straight upward, you could drive straight up and reach outer space in less than an hour?" Okay, somewhat interesting, didn't really blow my mind. Someone else said, "Well, did you know that the oldest person living today, when she was born or when he was born with a completely different set of humans?" Which definitely more of a thinking question, a little morbid, but that was interesting. So then it got around to me, and I'm kind of a marketing nerd, so I said, "Well, did you guys know that most companies out there, over 2/3 of them, outsource all or a portion of their content marketing strategy?" And I got a lot of blank stares, and I ended up buying the next round. But it still blows my mind, right? Because content marketing is a differentiator. It's not just good for the business, it's good for us as marketers. That's something we want to own and control. So it's crazy to me that people would want to outsource, any of that, but I can see in some situations it's necessary. So anyway, today I'm going to talk about how to create a content marketing strategy at your company. And I realize everybody here may be in different stages already. You may be at ground zero, you may be in the middle, you may already be at the end. And there's plenty of other resources out here that can tell you how to do this, right? If you guys are familiar with Content Marketing Institute, highly recommend you check them out. They've got a ton of stuff on how to do this. Do a Google search, you'll find something too. And while those are good resources, I think they lack the application. They're really good on theory, but I think what I'm going to tell you today is how it's actually worked in practice at a real company, if that sounds good. So first, what I want to say is that we all have to deal with this monster, right? But the good news is that we're all dealing with the same one. We're trying to get away from, or we're trying to understand that the enemy for all of us is the word no, right? No, Jane, you can't have a $60,000 budget for your content marketing strategy. No, Jeff, you can't post that. Our compliance department isn't going to accept that. Or no, we don't want our producers on social media because there's no telling what they're going to do. We want them to spend their time on business development activities. You've all heard variations of this before, right? Professional services companies are risk averse to a fault. So what I'm going to tell you today is how we got around that and managed to do it at our company. Full disclaimer here, I don't know if this will actually work at your companies, right? You have a senior leadership team and a culture that's going to be different than mine. But I do believe there's a lot of things you could take away from this and apply based on the current environment that you're in. So where are we starting? So I'm with PGIM Real Estate Finance. What is PGIM Real Estate Finance? So the best way to think about us is if you're in the process of buying a house, right? You or I, if we want to buy a house, typically we'll have to go to a bank or a rich uncle, and we'll have to borrow some money to pay for that, the mortgage for the house. It works the same way in commercial real estate. And you can think of commercial real estate as office buildings, hotels, multifamily properties like apartment buildings, anything like that. They're going to have to come to a bank, or what I would think is a better lender, us, to get money for those deals. We're a part of PGIM. PGIM is a $1.3 trillion asset management company. Within PGIM, there are 7 other sister companies just like us that focus on a different asset class. We're all under the Prudential umbrella. I'm sure you've probably heard of Prudential. You probably haven't heard of the other companies. Prudential, the life insurance company. So why am I telling you all this? Well, if you think in your company you've got it bad in terms of having to deal with compliance departments, lawyers, processes, regulations. I can guarantee I've got you beat in spades. So I'm going to tell you kind of what we did to get around a lot of that stuff today. So focusing on PGIM Real Estate for a second. So we've got, at the time we started this program, 60 producers. You could think of producers in a generic sense, right? They may be your lawyers. They may be your accountants. They may be your doctors. They may be your brokers. I'm going to use that term and salespeople kind of interchangeably throughout this, but you can think of it as your people, right? So we've got 60 producers at our company who generally are more interested in what food trucks are outside on a given day for lunch than they are in content marketing, right? There's low interest from senior leadership, no previous budget to speak of for any of this, and a small marketing team, 4 people, one of which is me. And we all know CMOs don't do any real work, so really it's 3 people who are trying to affect change at the whole company. So that's what we're dealing with there. But I'm going to go through kind of how we got through all that, and hopefully some of that sounds familiar. I mean, does any of that sound like similar challenges that you guys deal with? Shaking your head like, yeah, man, my CMO doesn't do crap. That's a little hurtful, but I'll continue. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through. It's a 10-point plan, and you're going, Jesus Christ, 10 points. Well, I didn't say it'd be easy, but it's a 10-point plan. You may not have to do all of this stuff, but I want it to be holistic so you can take different pieces of it to the extent you need it. So we're going to walk through that. I'm going to show you what we suggest you do at each stage, what we did when we were going through the process, and also go through some of the mistakes we made along the way. So hopefully you can learn from them, if that sounds good. So first step, you have to identify who within your company is going to be the ultimate decision maker for this plan. This may seem like an obvious step, but you'd be surprised how you can go awry if you don't actually know who it is. Is it your CEO? Is it your COO? Is it your CMO? God bless them if they have that kind of power, because I didn't, right? Maybe it's not an individual person. Maybe it's a group of people. Maybe you have a management team. Maybe you have a senior leadership team. Maybe it's a practice group head. Maybe it's Todd down the hall who doesn't make any eye contact with anybody. Figure out who it is. We made a mistake. I assumed that it was my COO, who I directly reported to. And why is it important to know who you're actually going to be presenting to? We built this whole story around what we thought, aligned with her objectives, right? You want to tailor your story to who it is you're pitching to. She ended up saying, well, no, I need the 3 business heads to approve of all this. So we had to rework our whole story for 3 different individuals. Could have saved a lot of time if we just knew right in advance who was going to be the person to approve everything. Step 2, this is probably the most critical aspect of the entire 10-point plan. You have to align your content marketing strategy with your business objectives. Why? Because if all you're doing the whole time is spouting the benefits of content marketing, you're doomed for failure, because the business side is speaking Latin and you're speaking Greek. You have to be able to speak in their language, and that means business objectives. You need to be able to tie a line between what they want to do from a business standpoint and what you can do from a content marketing standpoint. So how do you do that? Well, I think there's a few ways you can do it. Obviously, not every company is going to have an annual report. To the extent they do, that's the first place I would go. Easy stuff to find there. Go to the management analysis section. Lots of great stuff there. More likely, I think most of your companies are going to have group plans. Whether it's you're a consulting company, law firm, tax company, usually they're broken up into groups and specialty areas. I'm almost promise you they're going to have their own business plan. Get a hold of that plan because it's a gold mine of information. They're also most likely you're going to have regularly scheduled business development meetings. The sales teams are going to have these. If you're not already a part of them, I highly suggest you get your foot in the door there. Lots of good things there that you can tie back to what it is you want to try to do. Ask questions. You can even throw ideas out there during them and get some feedback, or set meetings afterwards with people who are in those to try to understand better stuff that might have been confusing to you in the meeting itself. But the liquid gold is going to be one-on-one meetings with the business leaders. They're going to be the best place to articulate what it is they want to do for the group, what they want to do for the company. And I think that's a great place for you to go to the extent you can do it. Now, so you've gotten that information from one or multiple versions of these sources. What do you do next? Try to put it into practice. So I'll give a law firm example because the lawyers are easy to pick on, right? So you've got Bob in the tax group, right? And you're sitting down with Bob and you say, Bob, I saw in your business plan, I heard in your sales meeting, you want to increase revenue generating activities, you want to expand the brand in Wyoming, right? How about instead of what your original plan was, basically email everybody in that zip code with an impressive email that shows all your rankings in Chambers or Legal 500, which are the legal directory rankings, because who doesn't love hearing about how other people are ranked? Let's do an event where we partner with a non-competing service provider in Wyoming, right? They can provide the Rolodex of people, since they're already there, of people who are interested. We'll underwrite the event, and then you'll be able to talk about state and local tax law that's most relevant to them in that scenario, right? By the way, our hypothetical Bob, God bless him, he may be an awful public speaker, right? So you're going to have to be able to adjust your strategy based on the strengths of your people. I've tried it before. Shoehorning people into things they're not good at is just not going to work. So you have to be able to adjust for them. If you don't spend the right amount of time on any other thing we talk about today, I would spend most of your time on this. Because if you don't get this right, everything else is dust in the wind. Because you're going to you have to align the business objectives with what you want to do from a content management standpoint. So 3, so you've gotten the business strategy. Now, the best way that I've found to educate people about content marketing in the context of business is to develop use cases. And from those use cases, you'll have to develop capabilities. So how do you do that? Well, for us, and like a lot of you, I'm sure as professional services companies, we're selling complex products, right? In the sense that they're ephemeral. I mean, it's not like I'm handing you an iPad and saying this is what we're marketing. You're marketing your people's expertise or complex financial products, whatever it may be. So this was a use case we tried to develop with our team to showcase what content marketing could do for them. In the first place, we went as video. One of our people came up to us and said, look, I'm trying to get people to understand that we can do affordable housing type financing deals, right? Normally people won't think of us for that. How do we do that? Well, what are we doing now? We've got a 4-page, 4,000-word document that basically outlines all the wonderful, riveting details about LIHTC credits and affordable housing. That's not going to get it done. So we said, why don't we create a video where you can do some simple animation to explain the process. We can even use your sultry voice to overlay it on top of the PowerPoint presentation, spit it out. Did that, got way more engagement than we ever did with the 4,000-page paper. 2, infographic. So there's lots of products in our world that take a long time to get through. There's a whole application process, lots of due diligence. Trying to explain what the timeline looks like for one of these is a challenge. Infographics was one way we were able to solve that challenge. So we said, okay, if your business case is to educate the public about these particular things that we do well, here's what we think content marketing can do to get you there. But we made a mistake. When we started off, we threw the whole kitchen sink at them. We said, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And the problem is we really couldn't. So what I would say is when you're coming up with your use cases and your capabilities list, your mileage is going to vary on this. You may not start out with infographics, you might not start with video, right? We didn't include white papers or podcasts or anything like that in our initial list. Those may be better for you right off the bat. But I would start by keeping it simple. Tip here, if you're having trouble coming up with use cases, you've read the business strategy, grab someone on the sales team who's friendly. You know, there's always at least one, and not everybody's great. There's always at least one that you like, you can talk to, bounce some of those ideas off of and get feedback from. One quick thing here, do you guys know about Reddit? Some people shaking their heads. So if you don't know what Reddit is, essentially it's a crowdsourced Q&A platform where you can go ask a question, people will answer it, and they'll upvote the best questions to the top of the page. So I was looking at Reddit the other day, and I saw that there was a question that somebody asked, if you could take somebody from the 1950s, take them out, put them in today, stand in front of them, and tell them one thing that would blow their mind, what would it be? You see, I'm obsessed with things that blow your mind. So do you know what the answer was? They said they would stand in front of them, take out their cell phone, and say, I have the sum total of all the world's knowledge on this phone. I can access it from anywhere, anytime. But most of the time, I just use it to look up cat memes or to argue with people on the internet. What's the point? The point of that is that you're not going to change human nature. You may build this grand use case list that you think is wonderful, but ultimately your team's going to co-opt it and use it how they think best. So you just need to be flexible depending on how that shakes out. 4, identify resource holes. So you've come up with your use cases, you've got a list of capabilities. Now it's time to take a hard assessment about what it is you need to actually execute this plan. And when I think about this stuff, I think about 3 primary buckets. Money. Do you need money to purchase software, to purchase equipment? People. Are your people trained in order to execute on things you want to do? Do they have the time to execute on the things you want to do? Technology. Do you have a CRM? Do you have email campaign software? Do you have a CMS system? Do they talk to each other? You may encounter issues in all of these categories like we did, but the biggest one for us was people, right? We underestimated the amount of volume that was going to come in after we started unleashing these services essentially to the platform, right? So how do we fix that? So we did a couple of things. One is, like your companies, you may be set up similarly where your producers, your market-facing people have executive assistants, legal secretaries, whatever it may be. My experience is that they generally have a lot of bandwidth, right? They're not utilized, I think, like they were even 10, 15 years ago. And they're interested in marketing. So we said, wow, we've got this whole task force that's sitting right with the producers. They're all over the country. Let's co-opt some of their time because they're interested in marketing and get them to help us with some of the lower level tasks that we need done for a lot of this stuff. And it ended up working great. It's a win-win because we get to utilize them to help us kind of with the volume. They get to do something beyond kind of what they're normally doing in the marketing phase. So the other thing I would say is automate, automate, automate. There's a whole nother topic we could spend on just automation, but I would look at your CRM system. I would look at your email campaign platform. If you have any proprietary things that you've built, to the extent you can automate any of this, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort going down. One quick example is in Salesforce, right? We track all of our deal closings in Salesforce. We set it up so that we could get an automatic notification when a deal closed and whether or not it was pre-approved by the producer to then produce some social media content around the closing of the deal. So now we don't have to pester the producers and they don't have to remember to come to us to produce the content. We're automatically doing it. Next. So if there's any children in the room, I would like them to leave now because I'm going to be talking about something I know scares the hell out of every marketer in this room, and that's ROI, return on investment, right? So we get the resources ideally to do all this stuff, but then the senior leadership team is going to look back at you and go, what did it get me? What are you using my resources for? So we have to build a platform around that, and this is the platform we built. The first layer of boxes are all the mediums that we generally play in, right? Are you taking my picture? Get this side. Yeah. The first 5 boxes are the mediums that we play in. You may have different ones you play in, but I'm guessing most of us all play in these, right? So within each box, we establish what we put on our business glasses, right? And we said, what are the metrics that are actually going to help us understand whether or not we're getting anything out of this stuff? You can see here a representative list of what some of those were. If you take conferences and events, for example, we had no clue what people were doing at conferences, right? How do you track that? We knew we were spending money on these sacred cow sponsorships and conferences that we've done year after year after year. We had no way of comparing them apples to apples across a spreadsheet, right? So one of the things that was most important for us was establish what is the cost per lead, right? And how do we establish that? Well, if we know what the cost of the sponsorship of the conference was, if we know what it costs for us to send our people there, and if we know how many leads or subsequent meetings or even closed deals we got out of it, then we can start to generate those kind of numbers. Then at the end of the year, we can put everything up together and say, this is a cost per lead for this event, this is a cost per lead for this event, and we can make much easier decisions for what we want to cut and what we want to invest more money in. The second layer you see there underneath the boxes is basically how you're going to track it. So it's great if you establish what the metrics are, but you got to be able to track it. So for us, that was all these systems here, which we'll go into a little bit more in a couple slides. But the bottom layer was how we were going to then benefit from all this data. And if you take, the website, for example, content optimization, now that we know where people are coming from in terms of coming to our website, what pages they're staying on the longest, we know what content we're putting up sucks and what content actually people want to come back and read about. So we can adjust based on there. You can see down the line kind of where we're thinking about these things. But this is important to think about and to invest time in. So 6, so now I'm going to talk about the B word, budget, right? So, I tend to think about these things in 2 buckets, right? One is the one-time startup cost that you're going to have to do at the beginning. Second is the recurring cost that you're going to have to pay over the course of your strategy, right? And so for us, we looked at the one-off costs and we said, we have to have video. What does that mean? So that's recording equipment, staging, some software, image purchasing. That took care of the one-off costs. And the annual costs we had to calculate, not as easy, but what are our people's time we're spending? It's not just the marketing team time, right? We're going to need the subject matter experts, i.e. the producers, to be able to engage with us to make this work. What's it going to cost them their time? That's a little bit more kind of fuzzy math, but it's something that you're probably going to get asked about. But beyond that, there's things like technology licenses, if you're using outside agencies, that kind of a thing. So you can see below what our budget was. Again, we wanted video, so it was going to cost us about $600 for all the equipment to get that. We had, corporate issued iPhones. That was all we need for the video. If you ever produce video on this, it's incredible. You don't need to buy thousands of dollars worth of actual, high-grade video equipment. The big ask for us was the graphic designer, but worth its weight in gold to the extent you can get it, because she not only does graphic design, but she does video editing too. Very useful. And then Canva. Has anybody heard of Canva before? Okay, yes. Then hopefully I'm not the only one singing its praises. One thing we didn't have was the gold standard, right, in marketing for graphic design, Adobe Illustrator expert, Adobe Photoshop expert, right? Those are complex programs that require special training to be able to do. Canva is a great shortcut, right? It's like Adobe InDesign for idiots. It's very easy to use. You can pump out content quickly. You can test it out for free, but I highly recommend you consider the corporate level investment, because you can create your brand standards in there, keep all your color coding the same, tag your content and your templates better. Highly recommend you look at that if you're struggling with graphic design. So 7, one of my favorite parts, working with compliance and legal. I realize you may not have a compliance department. Chances are you probably have a legal department. They're probably going to want to say in a lot of this, so I would involve them early on in the process. The biggest struggle for us, the biggest hurdle, we wanted to get our producers to send out business content on LinkedIn. You may have Twitter, you may want to send them out on Twitter too, right? Because everybody here probably has a corporate LinkedIn account, but the gold mine is to utilize their networks. That's where people are really engaging. I don't want to offend anybody in this room. I'm sure your companies are great, but they're not Nike. They're not Coke. We're boring, right? I had to browbeat my mother in order to follow our corporate account. She said, why do I follow a commercial real estate? Mom, just do it. I need the followers. My review's coming up. Just do it. All right. And have Dad do it. Okay. Right? So we get into the room with compliance, and I'm sitting across the table with them, and I'm saying, I want this to happen. I want the producers to be able to send out content on their own networks. And there's this uncomfortable 10-second pause, and he looks back at me and he says, I don't think we're set up to do that. So we needed to get him okay with being set up to do that, right? So the first thing we did was say, okay, part of the issue is we need to be able to track what people are saying. You may have noticed Hearsay, which was on the previous metric slide. Hearsay is one of a number of companies that will actually track corporate social media posting. So your producers register with Hearsay. You can then track what content they send out on their LinkedIn profile. Now, do we have someone sitting in a room analyzing this traffic every day? No. But if we ever get audited by regulators, we've got a paper trail, right? So then he looks at me across the table and he says, all right, people can do this now. They register on Hearsay. but I want everything to get pre-approved from compliance before it goes out. What? Social media is a living, breathing state of, thing happening really quickly. I'm not going to send people to get compliance approved, tweets or LinkedIn's every time they have to do that. So we had to work through that, right? So 2 was this compromise of saying, okay, back to use cases, right? If we agree that in these situations, this does not need pre-approval, if we're attending an event, if we've won an award, if we've done third-party publication, if we've done our own proprietary thought leadership, or if we've closed deals with very specific information that's not going to piss off FINRA or somebody else, fine, approved. Work with them at the beginning because they could tank stuff later on if you don't talk to them. 8, create a clear deliverables process. Nothing's going to tank a rollout of your grand strategy faster if you don't do this right. So I suggest you be able to answer a few questions. One is, how can your producers see what's even available, right? They're not necessarily going to know. You may have engaged some people in the process, but not everybody's going to know. So we published a capabilities list. We made sure we got on the sales calls to introduce this stuff. And we send out, still to this day, daily reminders about, hey, we can do this. This is a capability, and oh, by the way, here's a win that we did for somebody else to try to get people to know about this. 2 is, who are they supposed to go to when they want to do any of this stuff, right? We've operated historically a decentralized model where we said Jane handles this, Jack handles this, John handles this. Get a hold of them if you want to do it. We're actually experimenting now with a centralized model. You can create intake forms on Outlook that are pre-populated based on whatever it is that people are requesting. Then they would go to a central email, and then we could divvy up the work among the team. I think that's actually going to be better in the long run than having these one-person roadblocks. But these are some other questions I think you should strongly consider asking. And I won't read them, but you can get the slide deck to see them. Step 9, recruit evangelists. When you go to make your final pitch to the ultimate decision maker, they are going to want to know that your sales team, your producers, are on board with all of this. So I strongly recommend you find people, ideally with clout within the company, who you can recruit onto your side. And how do we do this? So we formed a pilot group of people just like this across the different business lines, and we pitched them, right? We put together mock-ups of deliverables that they could use. We went through some of the use cases with them. We wanted their feedback. A lot of it was negative, right? They're like, we're never going to use that. Or, hey, that's a really good idea. Can we take it one step further? Now you've engaged them in the process, and when the decision maker invariably does their diligence to see, hey, sales, are you actually on board with this? Now you've got people to support your cause. Last part, part 10. Call this release the Kraken moment. So you've checked all your boxes, right? You're ready to give your presentation. You're all ready to go. Or are you? Here's what I actually recommend you do instead. Get someone on your team, or more, even better, get someone on the sales team to role play who the decision maker is going to be. They should be in a negative mindset. You want them to be in a negative mindset, just looking to poo-poo anything about your strategy, right? This is very useful because it's going to help you now put together counter arguments and expect what's going to happen. We made a huge mistake here. We thought we had a lot of our bases covered when we went in to pitch this. We didn't. Take a look at a couple of these questions. If we tried this proposed content marketing strategy and it fails for whatever reason, will there be lasting internal, external consequences? Holy shit, I don't think lives are at stake here, but we had no good answer to that, right? Or if we approved only half your budget, what would we have to cut from this plan? Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought it would be a binary decision, right? Yes, your budget's approved, or no, it's not approved, go figure something else out. I didn't think they'd meet me halfway. So I think having these role play sessions will help you out with that. Last thing, this is kind of a bonus thing. Assuming you've got everything approved, you've got everything going, everything's working out great, you've got some early wins, promote the living hell out of those wins. Why? Because invariably, particularly at the beginning of this, you are going to have skeptics. And nothing convinces skeptics faster than, can you guess what it is? What will convince skeptics? Unbridled jealousy. They're going to look across the hall and they're going to see Sally and Jeff who are benefiting from content marketing strategy because they're getting press coverage, they're getting meetings, or dare I say, they're actually closing deals. If they see that, they're going to camp outside your door like the iPod. You've got the next iPod edition, right? You want that, so promote that. So this is what we did to promote it. Monthly content marketing newsletter, put all that stuff into an email that you can send out, speak regularly on the team calls, and then if you've got a company intranet page, I would highly recommend you feature stuff on there as well. So I'll leave you with this. I think success breeds more success. I think we've been able to experience a lot of success, and I hope you can from some parts of this plan too. Happy to answer any questions through email or after this if you guys have it, but thank you for your time.